He's having an issue with the link. Can we resend the link to him, please?
Get ready, get ready, get ready. It's Let's Talk Business with Cheryl J. Cusel. We are here for the second hour of our show. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Dr. Sinead Davis. Woo-hoo!
Hello, hello. Happy June month. We have Pride Month, we have Black Music Month, and we have Alzheimer's Awareness Month.
Yes, and we'll be celebrating Juneteenth. And so we are super, super excited for our guests who are coming on the show today. For those of you who are listening and tuning in, thank you so much, whether you're catching us on In Touch News. I'm certainly live on my Facebook page. You can find us on YouTube as well. Just search for In Touch Radio, In Touch News and Radio. And we're so very, very proud to have as our sponsor for the second hour of the show, which is Catch the Show, that will be all up in your medical business. And that's the Moffitt Cancer Center. And so, Dr. Davis, how do we think Moffitt?
Say that again. I got a little bit of a glitch there.
Oh, I was just saying, how do we thank Moffitt as being our medical sponsor?
We can absolutely thank Moffitt in everything that we do. Shout out to them for their partnership with us. We know that minorities experience health disparities at disproportionate rates. And this show, second hour, is all about helping to move our community from awareness to action and be more motivated to do that. And information is power, and that's why we're here. So to that end, Moffitt has been a tremendous partner in giving us information about cancer to share, and also sharing their amazing professionals. They're right in our backyard as a level 1 NCI center, as guests on our show, as support for our show, and we're very appreciative.
We are. Shout out to you. Thank you so much to our Moffitt family. Shout out to Dr. Green, who is just always in our corner supporting the initiatives that we put on, and vice versa. We support a lot of what they're doing. And to have USF in the house, we care. Another one of our sponsors, Dr. Angela Hill, and to our radio listening audience, you're going to hear more about her. This is not her first time on the show, so welcome back to Let's Talk Business with SJC and Dr. Davis.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. So she's here representing USF, and we'll hear more about that, and as well, We Care. And that takes us to another one of our sponsors, and that's Reach Up Inc., who we were there to celebrate the founders, 3 of them, their 20th anniversary. It's just hard to believe, but I remember when they first got started on the campus of USF. So that being said, we're coming to you to talk about the real. There's a show called The Real, but this show is talking about the real Alzheimer's experience. And we not only have the clinicians in the house that will share their expertise, but can also share what it's like to be a caregiver of an Alzheimer's loved one. So get ready, share the post, share this post and this video with your family and friends. It's information that you're going to want to hear. And with that, we're going to get started with our first guest. Let me just share just a snippet, because we could not do her justice with all that she has accomplished. But for those of you that really, really want to know, Dr. Angela Hill is a pharmacist and a tenured professor and associate dean of clinical practice and past chair of the USF Tanager College of Pharmacy. Dr. Hill received her doctorate of pharmacy degree from where? Dr. Davis, Florida A&M University. And has worked and consulted for community pharmacy practice, outpatient substance abuse treatment programs, primary care, long-term care, and carved out specialty areas of practice to include, but not limited to, geriatrics, psychiatry, neurology, alternative medicine, and substance abuse. Here's one of the things we want to focus on. One of her duties as the Associate Dean of Clinical Affairs includes her serving as the project manager for We Care, the community outreach arm for the college, where she coordinates activities within the community to recruit, retain, and educate minorities on research participation, and provides educational workshops on diseases that plagues our minority communities. Dr. Hill, there's so much going on. She's here today to talk to us about Alzheimer's disease. She is one of the pioneers for providing pharmacy services in memory disorder clinics in the state of Florida since the 90s. We can just stop right there. Dr. Davis, welcome to the show. And what would you want our radio listening audience to know that perhaps I didn't cover about you and this amazing gift that God has granted you with in caring for our community and our loved ones? Dr. Hill?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, first, let me thank you for the introduction and again, the opportunity. And I want to applaud you all for stopping and pausing and giving attention to Alzheimer's disease. One, the summer is busy and a whole lot of people aren't thinking about things like Alzheimer's disease. And like you said, this is a month for a whole bunch of things to include men's health. And so with that, it's just great to be here today. And what I'd like to really kind of talk to you about is really the impact that Alzheimer's disease is having on our community, especially African Americans, but our other Black and Brown counterparts as well. We know that this is a disease that there's no cure. And it's like saying the long goodbye. We actually saw, for those of us that are old enough, we've seen people in the public who have lived with the disease. We didn't even know they had it, but they were able to work around it because every day is a different day. And I'm so glad that you're bringing in the insights of caregivers also in this program and discussion, because their life, they're the ones that suffer the most and typically have to take on the burden of caring for the individual with disease. Oftentimes when, as the disease progresses, the person may or may not even know what's really going on. So what's really going on? We're talking about something that in the state of Florida alone, we have over 500,000 people that are living with it. And those are the ones that probably have gotten diagnosed. And so as you mentioned in my introduction, I've been working with memory disorder clinics. I work with brain health awareness programs. I've been on numerous advisory boards related to Alzheimer's disease. I'm actually serving on the Ideal Council for the Alzheimer's Association, which actually works a great deal with focusing on outreach and awareness for the African American community. But through all of that, one of the things we're discovering is the more we educate, we're still not able to change these numbers. And not only do we have over 500,000 individuals in the state of Florida, but when you think about globally how small a group we are as African Americans, we only make up 10 to 14% of the population, but it's about 14% of the population that has Alzheimer's disease that are African Americans.
Right.
You know, and that's sad compared to our white counterparts. About 10% of them live with the disease, about 12% of our Hispanics. But the African American community is about twice as likely to get it. Hispanics are 1.5 times likely to get it. And the why rests behind very similar to what we saw with COVID, with the pandemic, what we see with cancer disparities, what we see with diabetes, hypertension. It's really, about our lifestyles, unfortunately. And it is an inheritable condition. It is something we can get genetically. And so that part makes it really, really hard. But it's the obesity, it's the diabetes, it's the high blood pressure, it's the strokes and the heart attacks. I mean, we've looked at education, and yes, the more education you get, the better you are. But we know also some of us are genetically wired. I was sharing with Ms. Kassab before we started that my paternal grandmother and maternal grandfather lived with the disease prior to there being medications available to treat it. And I was just, a young pharmacist and didn't really even know how to help them, didn't understand all the things. And so my mother took on the burden of taking care of my grandfather for 12 years in her home. And so some of the things that I saw speak to, again, not just the impact on memory, but the psychological impact, the financial impact, and the burden that this disease really makes. And so I'm really excited about the caregiver discussion. But what I do want to add is that part of our challenge is that these risk factors, and I don't want to leave out things like smoking, because that's also in a very, very important risk factor that's avoidable, right? And so we have some things we can't change, like the older we get, we can't change. Our race, we can't change. Our sex, we can't change. But we do have the opportunity to change our lifestyle behaviors. So smoking, not exercising enough, all of these add to that risk factor, list for getting the disease. But we unfortunately can't undo genes and things of that nature. So in terms of just trying to paint a picture in terms of how big this the problem is, that to me is kind of really where we're jump starting.
Wow. Thank you so much. And we're going to jump start right in with Dr. Davis.
Yeah, you said a lot, Dr. Hill, very prevalent, and just like other, health issues, we have a disparate prevalence in our community as African Americans. That has a lot to do with those social determinant factors. Some things that we can modify, some things a little harder to modify in policy, but what we can modify is the information gap. Where we know where our risk factors are and we can do something about it. That's where we want to start. So share with us, Dr. Hill, some key signs that should trigger a screening, or at least information on how to be screened. And also tell us how Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed.
Okay. Well, a lot of what happens let me start with the diagnosis process. A lot of times what we're focusing on is not just memory, but specifics about the memory. We have 5 different buckets of things that we associate with memory. So for example, our ability to even move, motor function, is one of the things that, we're evaluating. But we're looking to see, is it a short-term memory deficit? Is it a long-term memory deficit? So many of us remember like childhood friends and things of that nature, but patients with Alzheimer's disease may not remember what they ate for breakfast yesterday, right? Or what they have an appointment coming up. They may not remember that. And so again, being oriented to time, place, and person, in addition to motor function, changes in language and speech, the ability to not only say a word, but say it in the right context, the ability to understand it, all of that is a part of our memory. Some other things that are a part of the memory piece is our ability to multitask, but also know where we are and when it is and what we're doing. So spatial orientation, like driving a car, requires really a combination of multiple memory aspects, knowing that you're in the right lane, you're driving, the direction you're going in, you're able to respond to a car slowing down, or knowing when to get off and on, the highway. All of those things are very complex processes. Tying your shoes, operating machinery, all of that are things that we pay attention to. So in the diagnostic process, we're looking for really any reason to explain why you would be having memory that is treatable. For example, you have some people that may have thyroid difficulties. They could have anemias. They may, in some cases, unfortunately, have cancer or diseases, infectious diseases like syphilis or HIV. So a lot of the workup and the diagnosis is really trying to rule out a lot of these other things, because we can fix something like an anemia very easily. We can certainly correct thyroid dysfunction. In some situations, patients might be depressed or anxious, and it might be because they're having sleep issues. So those are also aspects of that diagnostic process. And so having worked with memory disorder clinics, one of the opportunities that you have is to get all of those T's crossed and I's dotted, and us to be able to turn over every possible rock to figure out why it is that this person is having memory issues. Because you could have very well had surgery and it be residual from exposure to anesthesia, or be receiving chemotherapy and it be residual from the drug exposure. So one of the things I've prided myself on is looking out for cognitive impairing medications, because a lot of medications can also impair the memories. A prime example would be Benadryl or diphenhydramine. It's also found in Tylenol PM, Excedrin PM, Advil PM, these things that are over the counter. So just as a commercial for pharmacists being one, please talk to us before you get products like that, because there are a lot of things out there, pain medications, things that are well intended when used appropriately in their right vein, but a lot of times they can impair the memory. And I know, Dr. Davis, if you're prescribing Ativan and Xanax, and even the Valium, those that can really, really, unfortunately, interfere with our ability to learn new information and retain it and recall it. So when you go to the memory disorder clinic, those are all the things that we're doing, but the testing that's done to actually categorize the memory deficits are done based on your education level, based on your age. So we can compare how you test to people that are the same age and with the same education level that you have. And that's what makes it unique. But your primary care physician can do some screening and identify a lot of those red flags so that we can at least try to eliminate some of those things that are treatable and reversible early on.
Absolutely. Wow, that is a lot. So when we see a loved one having difficulties with their activities of daily living, the things that they're supposed to know to do, the shoe tying, the cooking, the just being in a place, knowing why you're there, and then doing what you're supposed to do while you're in that space. All those normal functions that are taken for granted are what is disrupted in Alzheimer's disease. Even the ability to express yourself and to participate in a normal conversation because of how certain words are interpreted can be impaired in Alzheimer's disease, is what you're saying. So any of that we see, we should, all those things should prompt a screening. I'm also
Dr. Davis, can we ask a question? Where can individuals go to be screened?
Well, Cheryl.
Yes. So again, your primary care doctors are a place to start, but depending on where you're located in the state of Florida, we have 17 memory disorder clinics. I'll be glad to share that list with you later. But we're fortunate that the University of South Florida has both the psychiatry center that has a memory disorder clinic funded by the Department of Elder Affairs. Our USF Bird Neuroscience Institute also has geriatric psychiatrists as well as nurse practitioners that are trained not only to screen, but actually manage and follow patients. We also have a brain health awareness center that is in the Lakeland area that I'm affiliated with, but there are a lot of places, but your primary care physician can do it. But the Bird Institute actually does allow individuals just to come in to get a memory screening, at any point. So there are common standardized screens that we use that help us. And I do want to add to that list of warning signs, so to speak, the ability to manage money, or to do calculations and those kind of things. And that becomes important because people have to pay bills and all of the things that are associated with that. So those, again, are just but a few of the warning signs that say, hey, something is wrong. But you also touched on something, that ability to care for yourself.
Yeah. Before you go on with that, I want to touch this screening because we have a fascinating, Bird Institute here at USF, right in our own backyard, and also to learn how you and your team are doing memory screening and participating in the general care of the patients and also the screening process. But when someone goes to their primary care office, can you tell us about some of those screening tests? Because many are at Medicare age, and I do primary care here. Memory screening and functional screening is a part of your comprehensive annual preventive exam. Tell us about those brief memory screens, because I know if you fail, it triggers that more comprehensive assessment. But tell our audience what can be expected from a primary care visit. I say to my patients, my team sometimes, about the 6CIT, the MMSE, these little tests that are sometimes very insightful into a bigger issue that's going on.
Exactly.
Talk about that primary care expectation.
So with the primary care physician, they might do an exercise, for example, asking you to count backwards by serial sevens, so we can say 193, 87, but we really have to think about what goes after that, right? Or they may ask you to write a sentence or give you a few words. For example, I might say apple, tree, pencil, and I'm going to ask Ms. Cheryl at the end of my interview what I said.
You got to remember that, Cheryl.
Let me write it down, apple, tree, pencil. So I'll repeat that and hope I remember it. But they may ask you that at the beginning of the evaluation and see if you remember that. They may give you a sentence like, Dr. Davis, pick the pencil up off the floor and write a sentence on the paper, and then watch. One, they're looking at your handwriting. They're trying to see if that sentence makes sense, all those kinds of details. They may ask you to draw a picture, and your ability to draw that picture that it gives you a sample, and then you draw another one, and they're looking to see if they're oriented. A common one is the clock test, where they tell you to draw a picture and put 10:45 a.m. on there. And so they're looking, did you have the hour hand showing at the right place? And was the minute hand showing at the right place? How close are the numbers, right? So those kinds of things become really important. So, and then they wait to the end, and then they go back and ask Miss Cheryl, what were those 3 items that I said?
Apple, tree, pencil.
And that's really, a check on things like short-term memory. But the other important part here is that caregivers, and I understand Mr. Perry is going to enlighten us a little bit on what that experience is like. We oftentimes depend on the caregiver to tell us a lot, because I promise you that Mr. Perry, as he's been caregiving, he was worried about his loved one's safety. He was worried about how she was going to eat, and if she's driving, where she is, she's going to get lost, because that's another red flag. People having geographic disorientation. I remember my grandmother, we just took her to see my uncle and drove from Tallahassee to Gainesville, and she wanted to get out of the van because it looked like those trees were moving instead of her realizing she was riding in a van. So when you go into the doctor's office, it's an emotional experience for the caregiver and the family. For the patient, there might be a period of denial and unawareness, depending on where they are in that process. But there might be some resistance. Are you calling me old? Are you trying to put me in a nursing home? Do you think I'm crazy? Those are common reactions. And then in the background, the caregiver is like, help. And so, I like to say, please talk to the primary care physician, nurse practitioner, or whomever that person is involved in your day-to-day care, because the memory disorder clinics are only screening mechanisms, and they want to create a partnership so they can send back their findings to the primary care doctor or the person that's a part of that everyday person's life, and then they help manage it based on the recommendations.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hill. You've given us a lot to think about, and you've given Dr. Davis an assignment. You've given me an assignment, and I'm going to just be saying all during duration of the rest of the show, apple, tree, pencil. Y'all may have to stop me. And as I listen to you, though, I'm just thinking and going over some of the lists, and I know you may hopefully get a minute to break down some of the earlier stages versus some of the late ones. But as I'm looking at some of those, I'm thinking I've gone through some of these things for years, and really forgetting the mathematical part I'm pretty good on, but just forgetting like what you did a few minutes ago where you placed something. I just thought that was something that everybody is going through, but at some point in your life, you've got to start paying attention to it. But you're going to have to also give a test to Mr. Perry. And so I'm going to go ahead and segue on because he's just too cool, calm, and collected. Exactly. And got his brag going on. But first of all, welcome to the show. Welcome to Let's Talk Business with SJC and my co-host, Dr. Davis. And so glad to have this conversation with you. Super, super busy guy, but you're making some great things happen in the Tampa Bay area. And listen, I'm just going to touch on just a couple of things that you are just excited about and gifted with, but you can come back and share with us, where you are, where people can come and connect with you and how they can experience what you are creating in the city of Tampa. But first of all, his name, Bay Perry, and most people will probably just misspell it, but Google it or look at our flyer. But again, thank you to those who are taking your lunch break with us. Please like and share this particular information, what they are sharing, what Dr. Hill is sharing, and now we're about to get into the real Alzheimer's experience that they both have gone through as primary caregivers. Who is he? He's a savvy operations strategist and visionary experience cultivator. Yeah, y'all go look that up. Mr. Bay Perry himself is an award-winning hospitality executive. He is also a seasoned executive who drives superior results from concept formation through significant rapid growth as the top-level owner-operator restaurateur. Now, this is what he does. He marries imagination with execution and has owned, managed, operated, and consulted on industry-leading gastropubs, innovative restaurants, craft breweries, brew pubs, and has launched numerous, are you ready for this? Top boutique and high volume food and beverage entities, along with other high performance food and beverage entertainment venues. He's a Renaissance man. He's a graduate of Bowling Green State University, and he's got some certifications that's coming behind him. What makes you all of that and then some? Mr. Perry.
I could not be more impressed by that introduction. Thank you so much, Sherry. That is phenomenal. Wow, I am blown away. You're too kind. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with such an esteemed group. This has been enlightening. This has been emotional. This has been something that has been exciting to see that this information is coming out now and communicated to the public with a little bit more understanding than when I first was introduced to this life-changing scenarios that is what I call one of the most horrific diseases in Alzheimer's. So I'm so honored to be here to be able to share some of my experience with you, but I can't thank you enough for, again, you're such a wonderful introduction and allowing me to join you on this platform.
Well, Mr. Perry, you are more than welcome, but it's you. You did the work. You are the serial successful entrepreneur, and we're going to break for commercial. So before we get into the real Alzheimer's experience with both of you, we'll come back at the top of the commercial with you. I just want to take this opportunity to our radio listening audience. Please like, tag, share, because what you're going to hear is profound information, but it's real information. And so, Mr. Perry, where can people find you during the week? Because you're so busy.
Well, during these days, I can be found at, one of Tampa's most emerging culture creator locations in Rose Bar, Tampa.
Yes.
Rose Bar, Tampa is a upscale casual intercontinental fusion restaurant located at 122 South Howard Avenue at the corner of Cleveland Avenue. We are the first and only Black-owned business and restaurant in the history of Tampa Bay on Howard Avenue and in Hyde Park, Soho Village. So we're so honored to be here and excited to be helping to contribute to the emerging culture that is Tampa Bay. But you can find me at Rose Bar Tampa, more likely than not, as I am there probably more than some say I should be. But it is a labor of love, and we're excited to be there. So please stop by, if nothing else, to come by and just see what we do and see how we're trying to make things happen here in San Francisco.
You are making things happen. You, your team, your staff, you're right. That's pristine location. Been in that location for many, many years. Understand all too well. We're going to go ahead and break for commercial, but we'll also shout out one of your friends and colleagues. He's been a guest on our show, Tiant McCoy.
Indeed. Big fan. I really enjoyed Tiant. Nothing but ultimate respect for him. Looking forward to having the opportunity to do more with him and aid to his growth and also be encouraged by the things that he's doing too. So great partner in the community. We love Tiant McCoy.
We'll look forward to it. Listen, we're going to break for commercial. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Audio, videos on, logos up. See you back after the break.
Cancer affects everyone, but minority populations are often hit hardest. Moffitt Cancer Center is working to address the barriers that keep some groups from getting the care they need. African Americans develop cancer at a younger age, have more aggressive cancers, and experience worse outcomes than the general population.
While cancer treatment is evolving with precision medicine, who is being left behind? We know for many decades that some groups experience a greater burden of cancer than others. We can prevent it, we can detect it early. It's very beatable when we find it early. I have worked with cancer patients during their treatment. All cancer patients have courage.
So my treatment was about 18 months. I had 3 cancers and 7 surgeries. But my son told me, like, Mom, you're the strongest person that I know. Moffitt saved my life.
During COVID-19, Moffitt is a safe place for your cancer care. Call now to schedule an appointment.
Strong, beautiful women take charge of their lives, and it starts with learning the facts. Did you know that most women diagnosed with breast cancer have no known risk factors or family history, and it's more deadly for Black women than any other race or ethnic group? But it doesn't have to be. If you're over 40, regardless of your race or ethnicity, you need to get a mammogram every year. Early detection saves lives. Talk with your doctor about the best screening plan for a strong, beautiful you.
Champions don't quit, but there's one kind of quitter I admire: former smokers. If you're over 55 and still smoking, or even if you quit years ago, talk with your doctor about lung cancer screening, even if you have no symptoms. It's quick and painless. Lung cancer is the nation's most deadly cancer, but screening can better the odds. Ask your doctor if it's right for you.
I don't know what it is about this show. It's exciting to finally get to the 1231 spot, but the guests and the information and knowledge that they're sharing with us, you just don't want to stop. You don't want to cut them off, but because we have time restrictions, we must. We have 2 phenomenal guests on the show today. So again, thank you, Dr. Angela Hill. We'll hear more with her after we now delve into the conversation of this restaurateur, serial entrepreneur. You heard him. Make your way down to South Tampa. It's Juneteenth. Y'all know I'm all about Black-owned businesses. I wouldn't be here if it were not having this conversation, because the DSI Black Pages is celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. So for 30 years, our primary goal and mission has been introducing you to Black-owned businesses. We want to see those dollars circulating in the community. So make your face down to the place in the Soho district and go find Rose Bar and tell them Cheryl sent you and Dr. Davis. But we're back to talk about something very, very serious, Alzheimer's. So welcome back to the show. And we just want to delve right in. But Dr. Davis, I don't want us to get too, when we come back to talk about the clinician studies and expertise. there is a question, the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, because that term is used interchangeably in the community. But let's just go ahead and we're going to dial in and have a conversation with you, Mr. Perry. The real Alzheimer's experience. When did you first know? And God bless your mother, because she birthed you. She must have did a great job, but now you're reciprocating and taking care of her. God bless you.
Well, it is the honor of my life to be, first of all, I would not be in the position to be a caregiver for my mother and my father currently at this time. My mother struggles, with Alzheimer's, but, my father is sharp as a tack and, has some mobility issues, but he, in his best way possible, he's still there aiding by the side of my mother as much as possible at nearly 90 years old.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
So it's been a joy, to come from the stock, as they used to say, that my parents are, and the success that they had and the things that they've done, for them to have the trust and in me to be able to do this for them also meant a lot to me. That was a true sign of success for me. Business is important, but I came from a family that was always about what can you do for others, and so the best gift I was ever given was the opportunity to be in a place where I could then take care of my family. I remember in the early 90s, as my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, my grandmother specifically struggled with Alzheimer's, and we didn't know what it was then. And I saw some things as a young man that were pretty scary. I saw one day visiting my grandmother in Little Rock, Arkansas, my grandparents in Little Rock, Arkansas. I watched my grandmother wake up in the middle of the night and literally chase my grandfather around the house with a knife, saying he better get out of this house before her husband gets home. And, the way that my mother intervened and my father to, make sure everybody was safe in the house first and do the things necessary to start to figure out what to do with my grandmother, resulted in moving them into what we would call then a nursing home. Okay. And it became a heart-wrenching burden for my mother and her siblings. As we lived in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, my mother traveled regularly to Little Rock, which was her birthplace. And it became such a labor of love that I witnessed her do for her mother all the way to her last days. And I think there was still a lack of understanding, a lack of education about what dementia, what Alzheimer's was. And this was, like I said, mid-90s now. But when I first saw what was happening with my mother, it was a shock. I moved to Tampa Bay in 2006, and I was called back to my home of Detroit, Michigan, to do, another business venture, or just another gastro pub restaurant thing came up, an opportunity came up, and some people wanted me to participate in that. I had not really seen my mother much between that moving here in 2006 and what would now be 2010, when I was going back for another business opportunity. Oh. The first day I arrived home, I arrived at my the home in which I was raised, and I noticed something different. My mother was a very meticulous, very on top of it, sharp every single day. I mean, dressed to the nines, out and about in the community. You could see, you knew her, she was the big hat lady at church. That is my mother. And when I walked into our home, I almost didn't recognize my mom. She, was hanging around in night clothes and, kind of nightgown, and hadn't been dressed for the day. And I could tell, that there was just food and pots and pans and unique places, and that wouldn't be typical of my mother, who was not quite, I wouldn't call her a drill sergeant, but she was very, again, meticulous about keeping a tight home. And so there was some obvious things I noticed differently. But she was happy to see me, and she was communicative, and we hugged and loved on each other like we always did. And to the point where she was excited. She said, baby, I'm about to go to the store and get us a bottle of wine. And my mother always enjoyed some nice wine. And as she left, she returned probably about 20 minutes later, empty-handed. And she had forgotten where she was going. She didn't, at the time, I could tell that she wasn't comfortable expressing that, so that she was probably noticing something, but she pulled back in that driveway and acted like things had, were all the same. Well, and throughout this process, I started to see a lot of different changes. I saw, again, that was a common one. I heard Dr. Hill reference that, the geographic aspect, when you're starting to move around and get into a car and you forget where you're going and whatnot. Again, I started seeing, pots being put in the microwave, and some things that were very concerned, again, the obvious things about just appearance changes and the lack of concern for some of that vanity, which was, also a part of my mother.
Wow.
So,
now, Perry?
Yes.
Perry, was your mom retired at the time? What was her age when you returned back home?
Yes, when I returned back home, my mom was then 65.
Okay.
And she had retired early. And this was also an identifier. Now that we think about it, hindsight always being 20/20. My mother was an educator. Okay. She is a PhD in American Culture Studies, a very articulate author. She has been referred to as Madam Shakespeare for her prowess with some Shakespeare literature and her success at Harvard University. My mother created video games. She was a recorded gospel artist, board games, mathematic games, things that were always about, education. And there was
that's powerful.
A very obvious change in the way she was going about things. We even now recall this as her children recall some changes when she was, when in schools. She was working at University of Toledo in Ohio in their Africana Studies department. And I remember that there was some concern about how she was recording grades. She had an old school grade book where she wrote them in physically. And at this time, they were now requested to be put in via computer.
Electronically,
correct. And it's funny, we had, I think we might have had one of the first Apple IIe computers back in the 80s. I mean, so we weren't shy to computers in our household. And again, my mother did a lot of writing. But for her, a computer was a word processor. It was not a device to, search information and to, and to be able to interact in other things. So I remember having a talk with her about, Mom, this is the process now. We, the university wants you to put the grades in this way. And she, I just always looked at it as maybe this is part of her rebellious nature and she likes to be the way that she is. But now, when I think back, I start to wonder whether even signs as early as then about some just uncomfortability about change and maybe not being able to remember new things that were being presented to her. And that, it would be hard for me to believe because, much like the ladies on this panel here today, I mean, my mother was brilliant, and she could do no wrong. Everybody sought out my mother for advice, for help. She was on every board in the community. You name it. So to see her struggle in anything was new to me. So, but when we really started getting a grasp of it, so I noticed quickly, again, it's 2010, I'm home visiting. I felt like there needed to be some tests being done. You know, I said, okay, there's something going on here. So, you know, when we went and we spoke with the neurologist and wanted to have some tests done. And long story short, some of the tests that, you know, Dr. Hill was mentioning, you know, about some memory triggers, you know, writing some
cognitive, yes.
the test. That was 100% accurate. And, you know, she did not do well on these tests. And long story short in that area was that the doctors told me that your mother probably it's not a good idea for her to live alone. At this time, my father was still working daily at the University of Eastern Michigan. And he was about an hour away. So, you know, he would come down, he'd come back and forth to our home every weekend and almost every night. But even that time of difference of time, it created a fear of her safety. As we became informed and now knowledgeable about some things going on with her and had some connection to, again, her mother's health history. So, you know, and even, you know, with some pushback from my father and my siblings, I felt like I was the only person that was able to intervene right away. You know, as you mentioned, I am a serial entrepreneur. I have pretty much worked for myself since my early 20s. So I've had the ability to move around and do things at my own schedule. You know, I had a home here at the time. My little brother and little sister, I call them that as they're now 40 years old and doing very well. We're just in, you know, starting their college and academic careers. And so, you know, they weren't in a position to do those things. Again, my father aging, but yet being the consummate workaholic and provider was just not ready for that and couldn't handle the care side of it. So, and I'm new to Tampa Bay and I'm excited about these new opportunities. But you know, I come from a place where family first.
Family first. Mr. Perry, oh my gosh, we say thank you. Listen, I'm a mother of two sons. Dr. Davis is the mother of a son. And to hear you talk and speak of the love and care, meticulous love and care for your mother just warms my heart. That's a beautiful story. Hopefully one day we'll read about it in your book. I really want to learn more about your mother, but I got to give Dr. Davis a chance to come in and get her questions and get the conversation started with her. You're still there. And after we hear a little more from you, we want to come back and hear a little more with Dr. Hill. But listen, you talked about the music talent in your family. You know, this is National Black Music Month. And I understand you could do a little something in the music arena as well, correct?
Well, you know, I dabble. I have been playing piano and saxophone for most of my life. So, and again, that was a gift from my mother and both sides of my family. Quite honestly, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a jazz musician, played on the Jimmy Lunsford Band on the Ed Sullivan Show. You know, again, both my mother's side of the family are all gospel artists. My late uncle was the organist at Potter's House in T.D. Jakes Church.
Wow!
So, you know, I grew up around phenomenal musicians, and I was trained as a classical competitive pianist. I played jazz and gospel for my church growing up, and have had the fortunate opportunity to write and produce some mainstream R&B and soul music. And I have fun doing it, and it's a love, and music is my first love.
Well, listen, it's National Black Music Month. Ricky, if there are two slides I think you have, the caravans, and who just had a birthday on yesterday in the world of music, while Dr. Davis is getting ready to come on. Listen, I got to go ahead and just say apple tree pencil, apple tree pencil. And Dr. Davis, I hope you got your question ready for when Dr. Hill comes back on. Okay, babe, who's in that picture that you know?
Well,
what's on your monitor?
Well, I wanted to first ask about the first step, but we're kind of past it now. If Mr. Perry, you first took your mom to a neurologist, or was there some of those preliminary screenings with the primary doctor that led you to the neurologist? And also, you know, caregiver strain is real. And also, as the closest person to the loved one affected with Alzheimer's, you know, sometimes they, you know, you said your grandmother didn't recognize your grandfather and she went to attack him at some point. Sometimes, you know, I've heard, you know, caregivers of, you know, patients with Alzheimer's disease, you know, they feel abused, they feel mistreated. When people are close to us, you're essentially a safe space to be vulnerable. So I want to talk about, I want you to talk about any experience with caregiver strain. How do you, you know, deal with that? And also just let us know if, you know, your experience with your primary through finding about your mom's diagnosis.
Well, to start with the experience with my primary, due to the fact that I was not around my mother, for really some years. I mean, we would visit for holidays and speak on the phone and whatnot. After I had moved south here to Tampa Bay, I found that my mother was a little secretive. She had been to her primary and had spoken with her primary care provider, and had been even given some medications that she was not taking. So there definitely had been some type of communication about this with primary. I think that with a little empty nest going on, you know, all of her children in different parts of the country, and her just really in her own space, she kind of covered it up. Now, and I will admit, you know, as long as my mother was speaking, my mom still to this day, she's become a little nonverbal. She can't, you know, like Dr. Hill also mentioned, you know, she can't really put words together that make sense, but you can tell that when she sees us and every now and then, you know, it'll come out, and her humor and charisma is still inside there. But what I will say is that the doctor side of things was probably missed early on because of the fact that she was there alone, and she did a good job of covering that up. And she never admitted one day that she was ill or struggling, and still has yet to do so. With any mental deficiencies or of that nature. So I think, you know, part of it is also brought an awareness of being, you know, paying a lot more attention to your loved ones, and keeping the communication levels up, and you know, being involved in their healthcare, because I feel like we might have missed something. But I didn't know any better. And the only thing I knew to do was that, you know, I hit a little bit of Google and talked to some friends and said, okay, what do we need to do? They said, you need to go see a neurologist. So when I witnessed it for myself, that was the steps that I was able to and prepared to take. But there was, again, some primary care provider that was in the know. And I think my mom kept that a secret from us. And in talking about, you know, some of our struggles, you know, with being a caregiver, and it's hard for me to use that word, because I'm just her son.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm taking care of my mom the best I can. But I learned because of some struggles that there needs to be some caregiver support. There needs to be a way to you know, for some outlet. And a lot of it was emotional, because no matter much, you know, how much education you have, and no matter what you think, you know, it's different when it's your mama.
Yes.
You know, it's different because I know what to do. I know exactly what was needed. I could read every book, article, and would know what to do. But in the moment, I'm looking at this woman that raised me, this woman that is as close to perfection as I have seen in my eyes. And I'm saying, Mom, come on, you can do this. Mom, why are you acting like that? Knowing that when I should have just, you know, deterred her in another way, or redirected her in another way, or never, you know, not ask her certain questions, because I know that that's something that could cause more anxiety or pressure, those things that I knew very well, but it was very hard to watch that transition. And I hate to use that word, deterioration. You know, I'm thankful for when I first moved here. My mother is a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. When I first moved here, there was a festival, Black Heritage Festival being held at Curtis Hickson Park. And one of the first things I did was, you know, because she was such an active member, I said I had to get in touch with some of her sorors. And I took her down there and we took her to her tent and they embraced my mama like they had known her all her life. Most of them met her for the first time. And, you know, and I could see again, differences where I couldn't provide some of the warm fuzzy that was needed, but her sorors did and could. And that was so powerful and important. And I'm forever in their debt and so grateful. But I think one of the problems is that, you know what to do. And I didn't possess the caregiver gene. I'm a very pragmatic, get it done, results oriented, make it happen type person.
And that long-term memory, I'm sure, is what was triggered with seeing the members of the sorority. Dr. Hill is also a member of Delta Sigma Theta, my chapter, Tampa alumni chapter. So Dr. Hill, could you also speak to caregiver strain just briefly? And then I think Cheryl's going to ask you about some final points, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, actually, because of what the two of them, Perry just has, I'm in tears over here. You know, my mom has gone on to be with the Lord, but I understand what that's like when using that terminology. I remember that's like telling your husband he's a babysitter of the children. You can't babysit your own children. But I love the way you shared that explanation. But I've spoken with our programmer. We think that this message is important. If you all have to leave, we understand, but we will leave this open for you to complete your final thoughts. So I don't want you rushing, Dr. Hill, unless you have to go. And the same with you, because the both of you have so much in common in your experiences. So Dr. Hill, you've got the mic.
Well, I actually want to go back to Mr. Perry because he was kind of mid-sentence and I'm kind of choked up, I tell you.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I, you know, my message is very clear and succinct, but I definitely wanted to allow him to kind of finish what he was saying. And then I'll chime in with some.
Perry, you have the mic.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hill. And I'll be brief because this is something that is, you know, it's gotten easier for me to talk about, but I still live in it. You know, my mother currently is residing in Discovery Palms, Discovery Village in Tampa Palms. It is a memory care facility. I remember when she was in my home though for 9.5 years. And as we recently transferred her to memory care facility, as we're just unable to maintain the level of care as it changed, you know, things like incontinence and things that picked up a lot more regularity. I didn't feel comfortable locking my mother up to be able to go work and do things. And that's what I felt like, you know, I had to do. I hired in-home healthcare aides that were changing all the time. People, you know, couldn't come to work. And I thought that even created more confusion. And it was just really uncomfortable having so many people in the home. But again, and I'm very thankful for Bird Institute. That is where we initiated the process of getting a better understanding on another more succinct diagnoses, and got her care program established was via Bird Institute. And so I'm really appreciative of the relationship that we have had there and then established there with some of the phenomenal you know, physicians and neurologists and all of the medical staff and team that were working there. Even, I mean, and the social workers there, you know, helped me get an understanding better of where, you know, how things would go and what would need to be done. And in some ways, you know, people say that, you know, we saved my mother's life. She had some health issues that also she was unable to communicate. And because of now a more consistent care and being with family, we were able to curtail some things there. And so again, I'm, very appreciative of that. But, one of the things, if I could leave anybody, I don't want to say the word advice because I am not the proper person probably to give advice, but just to share my experience. This sounds cliche, but one of the things that, and I'm going to give you just a brief insight into some personal things. My mother and I really weren't seeing eye to eye for some years, right, prior to me connecting with her health issues. But I love my mom, and I am who I am because of her and in cooperation with my father. But I knew that there was a help need there, and we have to put away a lot of ourselves, and that's what you do as a caregiver. There is a sacrifice there. It has been hard on family. It has been hard in professional life, but there's a sacrifice there, and I'm so glad to see a lot of the progress that we've made. And Dr. Hill mentioned some things that I just, that just weren't even available now 12 years ago, 10 years ago. There's so much more knowledge about it. I remember that when I was first looking, there was no such thing as a memory care facility when I was starting this process. And now that there's provisions in there, and I say, and the pride was even going back to my grandmother. My mom promised, she fought me as a child to make me promise to never put her in a nursing home. So I fought that because of the experience with her mother. So I fought that for years in terms of other assisted living scenarios that could happen. Probably the best choice we ever made was getting her somewhere where she was safe, where there was someone to check and monitor her health daily, where she could feel free and not, in a lot of ways, we thought we were protecting her, but we were protecting our own guilt and feeling in fear of letting my mother be somewhere she didn't want to be. And I really feel like it's the best decision we ever made. And we visit with her on a regular basis. I'm thankful. I literally bumped into one of her nurses at Publix yesterday. They come down to my restaurant at Rose Bar, and there's some of the most beautiful people. I'm so thankful for them. And the consistency has been great. But, you got to give up the fact that these loved ones, you got to give up some of your own fears and focus on doing what's needed to keep them safe, healthy, and protect, and then get as much help as you can. If some people may need support groups, some people may need, you got to find a way to get some respite, take a break, take a vacation, have somebody come in, because you can burn out and it can be dangerous for both your health, psychological, physical, as well as the person you're caring for. So that being said, but I wouldn't, change it for the world, because this has also helped change me to a different, I think, better version of myself. And I think, mommy would be proud.
And if I could say anything just to kind of spin off of that, I think, again, knowing the signs, getting evaluated as early as possible, because the medications we have aren't curing anything. They're just slowing the car down progress. We have some medications now that are sophisticated enough to maybe modify the disease, but we're still doing research. So, and that's a whole nother talk, a whole nother time. But I also, you said it best, utilize the resources, and certainly don't be afraid to ask for help, because that piece on respite care and all of that is really, really real. The other thing is, when the terminology overwhelms you, please ask questions. So you'll commonly hear people say, oh, she has dementia, or oh, she doesn't have dementia, she has Alzheimer's disease. When in fact, Alzheimer's disease is really a type of dementia, and it's one of the most common ones. But there are other types of dementia where memory decline is a symptom of what we see. So that's why evaluation is really important. That's why working with all healthcare professionals and letting them know what you're up to, especially realizing and remembering you have some health professionals, and I'm a little partial, but pharmacists being one, where you have access to. You can ask questions right now, at least, for not without having to make an appointment. So please utilize your resources. Again, I want to thank Dr. Davis and Ms. Cheryl for inviting me and allowing me to be a part of this, allowing me to appreciate Mr. Perry's story, because I know of him, but through his restaurant talent. And so I certainly just want to offer myself to the Tampa Bay community also as a resource, and I'll be glad to share my email information in the chat.
Yes.
And so let's try our best to not make this, what we associate with African American people. But thanks again for allowing me to be here.
You two are more than welcome to my co-host. This was just such an important session. To you, Dr. Hill, thank you. To you, Bay Perry, thank you for sharing such, I know, a difficult yet emotional conversation with us. Dr. Davis, before we wrap up, your final thoughts?
Thank you for allowing the show to go over and us to capture, all of this. And I want to be sure, have our listeners be sure to check us out online, because the resources that Mr. Perry has used in the Bird Institute, the support there, the resources that Dr. Hill has mentioned today. We're listing all of those just in case you've noticed some of the signs, the symptoms, the change in your loved one that should be screened. These resources are places to be screened, certainly here at Your Best You. If you need our kind of care, primary diabetes specialty care, because chronic disease does not exist in a silo. We're more than one issue. We can do initial screenings here, but those resources are there. Check those out. Share and like this program so others can hear the story. Mr. Bob, to hear about you. Dr. Hill, the giant of health knowledge and wealth of knowledge that you are, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And ditto what Dr. Davis has said, give our best to Dr. Kelvin Sneed. We got to spend some time with him. Shout out to Gary Hartfield last Friday with the Refinery of Social Exchange. 200 plus people were there. Mr. Perry, you both, and Dr. Hill, thank you for sharing your personal, real Alzheimer's experience. But we've got to make sure that we're taking care of Dr. Davis. What was your question from Dr. Hill, Dr. Davis? Because I know mine, apple tree pencil. What was your question? Ricky, put that slide up. We're going to test all of their memory. We're going to say goodbye. Come on, let's give Dr. Davis a little time. Look at your monitor. Who can you identify first in that picture as we also celebrate Black Music Month?
That's my
Come on, Perry.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you recognize in that picture?
Well, let me see if I can blow it up, because oh my gosh, Cheryl, you know.
It's a gospel group, the Caravans.
Oh. Huh? Yeah, I may have to go see Dr. Hill. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm gonna help y'all out. Yeah. Y'all don't see Albertina Walker and Shirley Caesar.
Yeah.
Shirley Caesar. Now that you say that, yeah.
I just wanted to end on a lighter note to make sure we're all succinct and in sync. And Ricky, as I mentioned earlier, again, just leaving on a lighter note. Who's the musician, Ricky, that has a birthday this month? I think we have that. So I bet you all know who that is. And Prince, that's Prince. His birthday was actually yesterday. So when I thought about Purple Rain and remembering that Wear Purple is also the color for Alzheimer's. So thank you all. Mr. Perry, you're giving our radio listening audience a personal invitation to come where?
Please come join me at Rose Bar Tampa, again, 122 South Howard Avenue. I would love to personally curate an experience that you cannot get anywhere else. We are an intercontinental fusion concept. It is a genre that I have created. You will not see this anywhere else until we have another location. And it is the celebration of Tampa Bay and all its cultures, Latin, Asian, French, Italian, Caribbean, African, down home, Southern country, comfort food. And we mix things together with intentionality and artistically. We focus on immune boosting ingredients, locally sourced, naturally raised, relationships with local farms. And we are all about the experience. We're not trying to sell you any food or any drink. We want to sell you an experience that you cannot get anywhere else. So you can find us at Rose Bar Tampa. That will be on Instagram at Rose Bar Tampa. You can follow me at Baye Perry, BAYEPERRY. And I look forward to seeing all those listeners. And again, thank you for this platform. This is so needed and so important. And we would love to do a special dinner and for some of the folks that would like to come out and talk business with the team here. And again, and that's what we're all about, relationships at Rose Bar Tampa.
My husband, Perry, you will appreciate this. My husband has been asking me all week. Now, we just got back. Where are you going for your birthday? And I just hadn't made up my mind. Well, I'm making it up right now. Next week, my birthday, I'm coming to the Rose Bar.
And it's worth it. I've been, so I want
y'all come and join me. June 16th, I believe that's next Thursday.
Okay.
Listen, Mr. Perry can't keep enough lamb chops. That is the lamb pops. That is my favorite, most favorite thing.
Well, get them ready. Next Thursday, we're coming over to the Rose Bar. You heard it here on Let's Talk Business with SJC. A special thank you to all. I know there was another question, but we can answer that question for our guests. Traumatic experiences causes Alzheimer's and influences early signs of it. Dr. Hill already said to us, absolutely yes. Thank you to our second hour show sponsor, Moffitt Cancer Center. Thank you for your support and believing in this platform to making sure that we can do and continue to do what we're doing. And that's Cash to Show. That's all up in your medical business. There's a lot going on with Juneteenth. We'll put it in our thank you post. Pay attention, check them out on social media. But this show, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Daryl, for the extra minutes, is a wrap.
Thank you.
And happy Pride Month.
Indeed.